This
Smash
guy
the
is saying that
like
his dad
button.
was part of a mermaid hunt in the 1980s. And even though he said, admittedly, I'm not sure if my dad was telling me the truth, I don't know why he would lie about this. Like, he was a pretty straight shooter, a pretty straightforward man. And if you're new here, Spooky Scary Storytime is a series where I share listeners' allegedly true stories about the creepiest or most unbelievable things that's ever happened to someone that they've never shared. And I know other stories like this exist, right? Like, I know that other people have told stories or shared stories on this app and others about mermaid hunts. Maybe there's some truth to this, maybe not. I don't know. You make the decision. I'm just here to tell the stories. So this guy's name is Kevin. Kevin said that he was born in the 1980s. Before he was born, his dad was in the Navy, and his dad worked as an underwater welder, which apparently is a very dangerous job. Shortly after Kevin was born, his dad was discharged from the Navy with a medical discharge, something to do with neurological issues. He also said his dad had this constant ringing in his ears that was always bothering him and always giving him migraines for years and years, pretty much up until his passing. Also worthy of noting, Kevin said that growing up, his dad was deathly afraid of water, of bathtubs, of pools, of lakes, like would not swim. Apparently, after he was discharged from the Navy, he still had old contacts with like people that friends that he had made in the Navy. And so he was working these like contract jobs. Boats were usually involved. They paid well. And he remembers his parents arguing about it. Like his mom did not like that he took these jobs, but his dad just was always like, okay, well, I have to get it done. Kevin was 16. He was apparently thinking a lot about what he was going to do in the future. Like he was like, do I go to college? Should I join the service? And part of him wanted to join the service, join the Navy like his dad. Grandpa had also been in the Navy, so it was like a family thing. There had been a lot of talk around the house about what he was going to do after high school. And his dad was insistent that he did not go into the service, but his mom was like, oh, if he wants to, he should. And his dad would slam his hand down and be like, he's not going into the service. One night in the summer, they're sitting outside. It's Kevin and his dad on the back porch, and Kevin was listening to music. He said he doesn't remember exactly what he was listening to, but it was something with like layered harmonies. His dad was sitting there drinking something, and he just put his drink down and he said, can you please turn that off? He said he didn't sound mad. He was just like tired. Kevin turned it off. They're just sitting there in silence. And then his dad is like, I should have told you this a long time ago, but I want to warn you about something in case one day I'm not around to tell you before you have to make the decision about what you're going to do with your future. And Kevin said that was just how he started this story. And he said that one day after he was discharged from the Navy, one of his buddies called him up and was like, hey, I have this contract job, pretty short term. It's a cash payment. There's an NDA for safety reasons. And his dad was told that basically he was just going to be part of rigging and underwater support. His dad apparently assumed that it was going to be some kind of illegal fishing vessel because apparently he had worked on one or two of these before. Maybe something with environmental enforcement, but he didn't ask too many questions because that's how these jobs worked. And he knew the buddy who called him and asked him to work on the job, like they had worked together before. So he says, yeah, I'll take the job. I need the money. And his friend's like, cool, we need to leave the dock at dusk. His dad tells him that basically that alone should have made him uneasy. And he knew that certain fishing vessels went out at dusk. It was the boat that should have unsettled him because the boat didn't look like normal fishing vessels. Nets were apparently very fine and threaded with metal filaments. The winches were military grade. Hold on to look up what that meant, but it's basically the mechanical device that like pulls up anchors or pulls up tension lines. The floodlights on the boat were designed to shine straight into the water instead of across the surface like on normal boats. Kevin's dad gets there. He notices very quickly that the crew is very stern, like nobody's cracking jokes, nobody's talking to each other, and he didn't recognize anybody except for his buddy. He notices as they're getting onto the boat that one guy makes the sign of the cross. Another thing he thought was strange was one guy was like eating a can of tuna, and he asks another guy if he wants some, and that guy says, I don't need anything from the sea. Before they take off, somebody hands out headphones, and they're like medical grade, like noise canceling, super tight against the skull. And Kevin's dad asks why, and somebody just says protocol. Once they were far enough out, the sonar picked up some shapes that were moving coordinated, like around the boat. He said they knew they weren't whales or sharks in the way that they were moving and like the patterns that they were swimming. Kevin's dad was just like waiting for instruction, but he noticed that the crew was calling them contacts, not animals. He heard people rushing around talking about vocal events and containment failures. He said that that's when his dad realized that this was not a fishing operation. The nets were deployed vertically, which meant they were trying to catch something swimming upward. He said they baited the water with something organic that came in these big glass jars. It wasn't fish. He thought maybe mammals of some kind, like land mammals, but he said he really didn't want to know. And that's when somebody taps him and tells him to put his headphones on, and they say basically don't take them off no matter what you think you hear. Kevin's dad goes to put on his headphones, but as he's like placing them over his ears, he can hear like a woman talking, and he's looking around the boat like, is there a woman on here? And he said it was like different women's voices. Like it sounded like one woman was begging for her son. One sounded like his own son calling for his dad. So he like looks, he's like, is there a kid on this boat? And the voices got clear, and he realized they weren't coming from the boat. They were coming from somewhere out in the water. And then he heard his own name. Then he tells Kevin that basically as soon as he snaps the headphones on his ears, he could still hear some sounds, but it was like at least muffled. Something hit the net, and it was hard enough to rock the boat. And a couple of the guys on the boat dropped to their knees and started vomiting. One of the other crew members started taking his headphones off, and two of the other guys jumped on top of him and started restraining him. And he tells Kevin that they hauled something onto the boat, and when he first saw it, his brain like just totally rejected it because it looked like a human. It's like a woman soaking wet, but the proportions were weird. Mouth open wider than a human's could. There were too many teeth, and the eyes were glossed over like fish eyes. Said he was just dumbfounded staring at it, and he noticed like light wasn't reflecting on the eyes, it was reflecting off them, like it wasn't focused on anything. It was like an animal's eyes. His buddy, the one that got him the job, walks over to him and motions for him to take off the headphones. He basically tells him that they're not as powerful when they're out of water. Kevin's dad is just like, what is that? And he said, look, this isn't what it looks like. This isn't hunting for sport. This is thinning them. Like, this is population control. Kevin's dad is like, well, what is it? And his friend's like, you know what it is. And Kevin's dad is just like, these aren't real. These don't exist. And he says, yeah, well, everybody knows that if you tell people that they exist, they're going to go looking for them. That's when Kevin's dad said that this thing looked at him and asked about Kevin. And he said, is he at home? Is he sleeping? Asked him if Kevin still wakes up crying at night. And that's when his friend, said he did it with something that looked like a cattle prodder that he told him later ruptured its insides with vibration. Once it was done, they headed back to shore and everybody was silent, but Kevin's dad could not get his mind around what he just saw. So he's asking his friend, he's like, well, why just one? And he said, that's all we can handle. That's all we can do in one night. And Kevin's dad was like, but why? And his friend basically tells him that they disrupt underwater cables, they interfere with submarine sonar. A lot of sailors had gone missing near certain vocal hotspots, but that the reports kept getting buried. Also tells him that it's dangerous because they know how to imitate people. Apparently he was paid handsomely and he went home, but he never returned back out to sea. And that was apparently the point that he started hating bathtubs, hating water. Apparently he never listened to music again. He developed chronic tinnitus, the ringing in your ears. He would wake up thrashing from nightmares, fighting something invisible. And that was the end of the story. And so Kevin's like, well, what was it? His dad apparently just told him, son, I already told you what it was. He said, I need you to listen to me and not go near the water. Kevin said his dad passed in 2018, and he's thought about this story a lot. He wishes he had asked more questions, and part of him isn't sure if his dad just told him this story so he wouldn't go into the Navy. He says his gut is telling him the truth because if he didn't want me to go in the Navy, he would have just told me he didn't want me to go into the Navy. He was not the type to make up tall tales. He said he has found audio clips online of what sound like distorted voices in the water, which some people say are whale calls, but other people swear that you can hear voices and singing underneath them. His name was changed, but he'll be seeing the comments. Let him know if you have thoughts. I love stories like this. I love the weird ones. So if you have a story like this, please feel free to send it in. We would love to hear it.